Friends, chess players, welcome back. It's a special day today. In fact, it's February 6th, and Netflix has just released The Queen of Chess, the real Queen of Chess, with the docu-series about Judit Polgar. I already told you about it last week. Go check it out. So today we couldn't help but dedicate this episode to Polgar, and so we'll do a bit of middle game strategy by looking at a game by Judit Polgar, a beautiful game by Judit Polgar, and we'll set some rules. 3 rules for punishing when your opponent plays slowly in the opening, or in general, let's say when they don't respect the classical principles. In fact, we'll see. A beautiful game, which is a match between Polgar and Alexei Shirov, so one of the strongest players. From a tactical point of view, a very, very, very aggressive player. And in this game, we'll see how things went for sure. Polgar played a great game. Let's see if it was enough to win. In any case, today we'll look at these 3 rules. So let's get right into the match. Enough with the chit-chat, because I want to immediately talk technically about this game and the rules we're going to examine. First of all, let's lay out the opening. It was a modern defense, so let's call it the modern Gurgenidze variation. And I played this opening for a long time in my childhood, and here Judit played a very, very annoying variation. Obviously, what is Black's plan in this position? Here, Black simply wants to play the move d5 and above all, wants to set up a strategy based on the light squares. For example, the main line here goes with f4 and after that d5. At this point, White pushes e5. And Black's goal is to exchange this bishop. Here, for example, one of Black's dreams would be after knight to h6. You can already see the knight aiming at the white squares, knight f3. One of Black's dreams is to be able to make this exchange and then, let's say, set up this strategy on the squares. The light squares. Afterwards, of course, the defense will also continue with moves like h5, right? To try to block White's advance with g4. And let's say this is more or less the modern defense. Gurgenidze, it's White who can really suffer quite a bit with the strategy on the light squares. I've actually achieved many victories in this variation, but here Judit plays a different line. In my opinion, it's very clever, and I remember back then it really bothered me, which is the variation with bishop to c4. Well, this variation is really annoying because I want to play d5 and White prevents me from doing so. Here, from memory. I remember that Black's plan was to play b5 and after bishop to b3 to try to take this space. But with the queen's pawn opening, we're already talking about a completely different structure. So here, Black's plan is no longer to play d5. In some way. So we can say that White has managed to change the nature of the position. And I'll tell you, especially at lower levels, when we manage, in short, to get out of our opponent's ideas, we definitely put them in serious trouble. Obviously, this isn't the case with Shirov, even though it's worth noting that good old Shirov did find himself in trouble in this game and this move. d6, queen to f3, a very energetic move. You see? Right from the start, White tries to create some weaknesses in Black's position, obviously looking to develop his pieces, and maybe one day he'll want to castle long. It's definitely not a problem because this knight goes to e2, so we don't have any issues with the f3 square. And yes, as you can already see, and I often tell you this, these modern openings, even though I played them a lot as a kid, don't really convince me that much anymore. Because here, look, White has a space advantage in the center, has developed 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, and Black, well, has developed 1. I mean, the position is more or less equal, it's playable, there are no problems. Now, Black tries with b5 to get his counterplay on the queen side, but let's say I'm not so convinced by it anymore. Black's play, because in my opinion, White is simply comfortable with a space advantage in the center and a development advantage. So, in short, I wouldn't recommend playing like this with Black. Here, Shirov continues with a 5. And we're getting to our 3 rules. To our 3 rules, obviously a 3 to a 4 is being threatened. And after bishop f6, we arrive at the first rule. The first rule is that when we have a development advantage, or to put it another way, as I always say, I always use this word, when we have a dynamic advantage, what should we do? We should try to open up the lines, because opening the lines will bring my dynamism to life. So one of the things we need to try to do here is in some way to open up a battleground. So I think you've already figured out the move. But be careful, I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with completing development here. Even bishop to f4 could have been a perfectly good move. Develop a piece. Maybe then I don't really know if I want to castle long since these pawns here are quite aggressive. But maybe I clear the file, I free myself up. The d1 square for the rook, so even bishop to f4 That would have been fine. But if we want to play by the principles, advantage, dynamics, it means opening up the game, obviously, if possible. And so d5. Judith immediately opens hostilities. Obviously, you can see how the bishop is aiming with x-ray pressure at f7. Also, the queen is aiming with x-ray pressure at a8, and opening up the position could turn out to be quite dangerous for black. In fact, black first captures on d5 and then plays e5. Because obviously, he can't allow the opening of this position. Look here, we're practically threatening everything, so it's not a great idea. Let's just say opening up this position. Then, of course, even structurally, this weakness remains. But I can assure you that here, the pawn structure is the least of the problems. Because now at a certain point, we can also castle and bring the rook to a1. In short, there's quite a significant attack against the opponent's king. So obviously, let's say Shirov keeps everything closed and Judith plays knight to a4. The knight, let's say, moves to an interesting square. I might be creating some threats and I'm also preventing an easy development. Why not? Now, I can't play a move like knight to d7, which I would have liked to play, because obviously there's this threat. And of course, we have to note that the move f5 is not playable because obviously, let's say it opens up this e6 square, which is quite problematic, to use an understatement, for black. And knight to f4, here queen to c7 is played. Precisely because now I want to develop the knight. But first I have to defend the pawn on d6. And so, as before, I have the advantage. Dynamic, let's play. For opening lines, the first rule is c4. Obviously, we want to open the file, we want to open the c file, but we also want to open the diagonal, so b takes c4. There's not much to be done here. I'm also threatening c5 here. Watch out for c5 and then d6. So here, black really has to capture on c4. Bishop to e4 check, knight blocks, very good. We've reached a critical position where, let's say, white definitely has a very hot, very interesting position, but often many of us make a mistake here. And this brings us to the second rule. The second rule is that everyone must join the party. So we need to bring as many pieces as possible into play, because we won't attack with just 1, 2, or 3. So here, a trap for us could be this. I play knight to g5, threatening mate, but actually no, because I'm attacking with absolutely nothing, with just 1 and 2. The opponent simply develops the knight here, solves all his problems, then castles, and I haven't accomplished anything. So you see, when we try to attack with just a few pieces, our attack doesn't work. So let's try to bring everyone to the party. And so here, knight to c3. No, let's also bring the other knight into play. Now black has to be careful, because in certain cases I might even play knight to b5, threatening this pawn here. So you have to give me the bishop, and by giving me this bishop, in short, you lose all the light squares. So there are a couple of interesting ideas. Another interesting idea is tactical, of course. The knight can sacrifice itself and the other can follow up to e4. And since the king is weak, you have to be careful. So you see how many ideas develop simply by bringing more pieces into play. More pieces. The more pieces I bring into play, the more attacking ideas I'll have. So don't attack with just one piece, as I often see people do. Let's try to attack with as many pieces as possible. And here black is already desperate. He plays king to a7 because he can't play the knight. e7, obviously with the idea of castling right after, because here knight to f6 takes advantage of the pin on the knight to break violently into the position you see with the queen. After that, also knight to e4. In short, knight takes d6 and the game is over. So here desperately black tries to play rook e7, obviously with the idea of playing after knight to f6. Well, let's move on to our third rule. After we've done everything right, we've opened the lines, we've developed the pieces, let's look for tactics. Let's look for tactics, because this is the moment when tactics start to take hold. And here we have a beautiful combination. Knight takes d6. So we remove, let's say, the defender. Careful, now another potential attacker comes in. Queen takes knight on e4. At this point, black can't simply move the queen, because then boom. The d6 pawn also comes in, opening the diagonal to the rook, so black is forced to capture. And at this point, we bring everyone to join the party. Bishop to g5, check. It's not just about bringing him to the party, but also bringing him along too. Black Shirov has to play queen to d7. And here, if you want, pause for the most spectacular combination of the game. Okay, it's not particularly complicated, but still very aesthetic. Rook to d7, which takes advantage of the king's poor positioning, the pin on the knight, and the queen's bad placement. The queen, of course, has to be sacrificed after bishop takes. After bishop takes d7, there's already a significant material advantage. But simply here, after queen to d1, once again, we bring all the pieces to the party. So queen to d1 to get in. In a forceful way, basically, after h, after bishop takes b5, queen to d6 check, king to d8, bishop to b5 check. And obviously here, Shirov resigns because white's pieces are simply about to deliver mate. So he would have to play king to c8. And at this point, there's a bit of everything, even this move. Here, the king has to go to b8 and pretty much everything wins. I imagine even something simple like knight to d6 wins. I bring another piece into play. I threaten this pawn. I think I can even win here just by simply castling short and bringing the rook into play. Basically, everything just wins. So Shirov resigned in this position. Do you see these three rules? That in addition to the rules, let's say, for punishing an opponent who develops poorly, are the main rules of dynamism, right? Open up the game, bring all our pieces to the party. And obviously, once we've done all that, we start looking for tactical shots, strictly. Do this in this order then. So I hope you enjoyed this game. I really do. And I also hope that the series that's just come out on Netflix will interest us a lot. As always, if you want to support the channel, subscribe, give a tactical like, leave a positional comment, and I'll see you in all the other videos.